Hey everybody, it's Robert here from Mentors for Mail. Thanks so much for tuning in again each and every week and for subscribing to the podcast. If you haven't followed us already out there on social media, it's Mentors, the number 4 MIL. And don't forget to go out there and support us through patreon.com. You can find us there as well with Mentors, the number 4 MIL. Hit that little bell up there in the top right-hand corner of the page, and that way you'll make sure that each time we drop a new episode, you're alerted. And again, thanks everyone for being here each and every week as we drop new episodes.
DMZ on the other side from the North Korea side.
What? Do tell.
It was a little weird because they would take your passport and not give it back to you till the end of the trip. And the North Korean visa was a separate piece of paper that they would just like put in there. But when you left, they took it back and it's like the whole thing never happened. What is this middle name on your passport, Sung Bin? What is that all about? Because my middle name is Korean. Mm-hmm. My first and last name are more like my dad French side, but my middle name's Korean. So they saw that in there and they're like, we just need you to sign this waiver. It says you're not going to try to go find your long lost relatives.
Hey, it's Robert Gowan. We're sitting at 15 Perry Street, and I'm joined by my sidekick.
Hey, it's Kyle, guys. How are you?
So at 15 Perry Street, we appreciate these guys allowing us to sit here and in the studio and record, and want to give a shout out to them. If you're not familiar with them, check them out on Instagram at 15 Perry Street. So we're joined by Sophie Hilaire. And Sophie, we can't thank you so much about coming in here. You just came from Florida. You drive all over. We want to talk about the van life and the whole thing, but thank you so much for being here.
For having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back, though, to the humble beginnings where everything started. Where did that happen?
Well, I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio. It's a little town called Bainbridge. And yeah, I was the oldest of 3 kids. I'm half Korean. So my mom's Korean, my dad's Caucasian. They met in Korea, obviously before I was born. But no, my dad was not a GI. He was an engineer. My mom was a nurse, and they worked in the same power plant. So, but yeah, I grew up there closer to downtown Cleveland my first few years of life. And then we moved out to a more rural area of Ohio. And yeah, from there went to Singapore for a short while, went right back to Ohio. And then from there, went to West Point.
Singapore, as far as like the whole family moved or just you?
No, yeah, the whole family. Okay. Actually, 3rd to 4th grade, I lived in Singapore, which was... I never even heard of Singapore at that age.
Yeah, 3rd or 4th grade, it's like, what, who, where?
Yeah, I lived in, middle of nowhere, Ohio. But because my mom was Asian and my dad had the opportunity to go abroad for work, and they just asked him, well, what part of the world do you want to go to? He worked for a really big company at the time. And he was like, well, how about somewhere in Asia? So they said, okay, you're going to Singapore. So we were supposed to be there for 3 to 5 years, but we ended up coming back after a year, which was a little unfortunate. I was having a blast, but.
I bet.
Okay. So from Singapore, where did you end up coming? You came back to Ohio.
Yeah, went back to the same house.
Same house.
Same house.
You didn't sell it or anything during this time frame?
No, I don't know why my parents didn't. It must have been a sound economical decision. Yeah. My dad's real good at that stuff. But just left all the stuff in the house, went to Singapore, and then came right back.
So from there until high school, and then what all of a sudden made you decide to go to West Point, of all places? Because I asked this because there's been several guests on the show, and they all have various different reasons and stuff that they end up going there. Some of it because they have former military family members, and some cases their parents went there, one of their parents, or whatever the case. So for you?
Yeah. Well, for me... No, there was no prior old grads, as they say, from my family. My dad actually had the idea originally when he was trying to help me figure out what colleges to go to. He said, all right, here's, where I think you should go. The whole concept was just so over my head. I was in an all-girls Catholic high school at the time, and I was a studio art major. And I thought I was going to go to art school. And he said, okay, I think you should either go to one of the academies or you should do ROTC. All these are great, very...
This is very strict, though, Sophie. So Catholic girls' school to an academy, there wasn't enough discipline by getting your hand slapped with a ruler and being in a Catholic
but she still wanted to be an art major. So
I know, it's really...
I think Catholic school maybe... I'm 35. Yeah, 35. But yeah, I mean, the nuns weren't like hitting us then. I'm sure they were like maybe, a few decades before that. But no, my school wasn't that strict. I mean, we had uniforms, but aside from that, it really wasn't bad. It was quite chill compared to West Point, I would say. But I mean, my dad just recommended going to West Point because he thought it was, the price was right and probably, it would set me up well.
Right. Yeah.
It was free. Yeah. Taxpayer funded.
There you go.
So, and I wasn't really that interested in it, but he actually forced my younger sister and I to do a visit. And we went and visited West Point and Annapolis. And after I visited, something just clicked for me there. Because when I was in high school, even though I was really artistic and kind of, artsy like that, I also had a Palm Pilot. I graduated high school 2005. So, I mean, that was like way before, smartphones. I had a Palm Pilot.
Yes. Holy cow.
And I love to just structure I've always had some I can't explain it, but I just love structure. I crave it. But I also love kind of just really.
But you're a nomad.
Yeah, I know. It's both. It's the extremes. And I'm always trying to find a way to balance it all out. But that part of West Point really appealed to me. All the structure and the fact that if you went there, that's one decision you make. Well, first you got to get in, but once you go there, you don't have to make another decision for the next 9 years, and you're going to be on a good path. You're going to do 4 years at the academy. You have at least a 5-year service obligation, and from there you can see what you want to do. But I thought, okay, this is. It also just appealed to my whatever side of me is very risk averse. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm a risk taker in a lot of ways, I like just having a plan and not having to worry about all these little things. How am I going to make money, et cetera, et cetera. So that appealed to me. And when I went there, actually, and I met these cadets, it was so weird because I was this junior in high school and I had like rainbow colored hair and my friend and I had like pierced our own noses and we were kind of, a little edgy. And then I went to West Point and these kids who were only a couple of years older than me just seemed like so mature. They were wearing their uniforms. They were, they were moving towards a mission that was much bigger than themselves. And that was very different from my life. And something about that I just admired so much. I thought, oh, wow, I would love to be like that. I really admire these cadets. I laugh when I think about cadets. They're like these little young children. But I really looked up to them. And I thought, okay, if I get in here, I'll go. And I got in, so I went.
So what was the difference between Annapolis on your visits between Annapolis and West Point?
Well, West Point was a lot like spookier, and it's a lot more history. And
it's more
I felt
like Hogwarts,
that.
right?
Yeah. People say it looks like Hogwarts, and it's just got so much more history. It's been there much longer, and something about that just drew me in. I know Annapolis is like more modern, more fun in an actual city, but I don't know. Even in my van, I love ghost towns. I love just going there by myself and like being around more historical things, and just there's something about it, the mystique and everything that drew me in. So, and also I would rather be in the Army than the Navy personally. To me, it just felt like the more what's the word? I don't want to insult any Navy people.
Go ahead.
It's not a bad thing. It just felt more to me. It just seemed like, you're going to be more in the action, things will be more in your face. And that's definitely what I was pulled towards. Because in addition to wanting to go to West Point because of the structure and just entering the military in general, I came from a childhood that was very chaotic, lots of violence, lots of abuse. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I read a stat one time that was like 90-something% of infantry soldiers had some kind of abuse going on at home. Yeah. In their childhoods. And so something about, And so to me, I don't know, the Army just felt like the place where something about like that comfort in violence or that
comfort in chaos.
Yes. And like drawn to the extremes. Mm-hmm. Like it just seemed, I guess it just seemed more extreme than Annapolis.
Now, were you also into sports in high school?
Kind of. I did crew rowing in high school. I'm 5'4", so I'm not tall, but
really, like the ones like the Olympics where there's like 4 or 5 people and somebody's saying row, row.
The lady on the front with the megaphone.
Everyone always asks that. I probably should have been a coxswain. I was small. I don't know. I wasn't like the smallest. Usually you like those people like 5 foot or under. But what I did do is I grew up playing piano, so I had a really good sense of rhythm. And so I did I rode crew in high school. I also did some kind of running, but I wasn't very fast back then. I did like cross country because my dad did, and I thought, okay, let me get into this sport. I was not good. I slowly got better, but my running didn't take off till I was definitely more in like my late teens or 20s.
What was your activity at West Point?
West Point, I did crew my first year. I ended up getting kicked off that team actually for a drinking violation.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just more of the extreme stuff coming in, you know, I had big issues with alcohol but also West Point's a place where like you could get in trouble for alcohol once and they're going to hit you with the book. You're marching 100 hours. You're going to AA meetings. You're like,
so did you get the Century Club every year?
You know about the Century Club?
I know all about all the little dirtbag lieutenants I had over my career.
Well,
can you give me a USMA rocket right now?
Oh my gosh, no, not the rocket. I think I forget the rocket.
You do tell. I'm not sure I'm familiar with all this.
Rocket, I had a lieutenant colonel when I was at 3rd Brigade, 3rd ID.
Yeah.
If you came from West Point and you were a lieutenant, first thing you did when you reported was you did the rocket in front of him. And at the military ball, at the cav balls we went to, he'd always make them stand up and do all the new butter bars, do the rocket in front of the entire.
All right, we might have to do like a separate
squad.
video here after
We'll
this.
get a reel of her doing the rocket.
Oh no, I've forgotten. I just can't remember it at all. No, really, I tried to do it the other day with my godsons, and I was like, I don't even remember this. But I'm sure I did do a lot of rockets at football games, but actually I wasn't Century Club. I was actually triple Century Club.
There you go. There you go.
That was a record for my class. It was 317 hours.
The best officers are always.
Yeah, and actually, I did feel coming out of West Point, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such a, can I say bad word?
Yeah.
A fuck up at this place that like, and everyone's telling me this is directly translated to what kind of officer you're going to be in the Army. And because I'm getting hours, that means I'm going to get men killed. And all the things they say to you there. And the Army actually went a lot better overall than West Point did for me. But that was me kind of just, West Point was my transition from like all the chaos in my, childhood, trying to escape that and create a life of my own. I mean, I was estranged for my first couple of years at West Point, just trying to really figure things out on my own, be financially independent, figure out my own path, like figure out what my, first job and all that, just figuring all that out. And then, getting into the Army and still probably working some of that out of my system.
Back up just a little bit. When did you guys realize, because as you start maturing and you saw that maturity as you were walking in, like shit's going to get real when I graduate?
Yeah. And the time that I was there, 05 to 09 when I graduated, that was, if anything, like more was going on then in the Army than like when I actually entered the Army. Things were kind of starting to slow down and then finally tapering off. But that was kind of the world that we were in. And in the mess hall, which is where we eat all our meals, all 4,000 cadets are eating at the same time for at least breakfast, lunch. I don't know what the rules are these days for dinner, but at certain ones of these meals, everyone would stand up, and if a graduate had passed away or been killed in action, we would all have a moment of silence. It just seemed like there were a lot of those going on when, especially when I was a cadet. So that was
I think
hard to avoid.
Was that the surge was 05, 06 in Iraq?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would have been your freshman and sophomore year. That would have been kind of a big deal. Like, I'm sure there was a lot of moments of silence for those two meals throughout those 2 years.
There were. And it was just such a wild thing because 9/11 happened when I was a freshman in high school. And so, it was just a few years after that I was at West Point.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go in the career path that you did do in the Army?
Talk about branch day.
Yeah, branch day.
Well, okay. So at West Point, you're evaluated, you have a class rank, and that class rank determines what your Army job is going to be and what your post is going to be. So thankfully, most cadets are cooperate and graduate, and we'll all help each other out and try to do well. But your class rank is determined. It's like 55% academic, I think 30% military, and then 15% your physical score. Physical score is your APFT and your sports and whatnot. And your military score is whatever made up job you have for that semester in your West Point company.
You're the first sergeant of your,
of the cadets, right?
Cool beans. Yeah. Sweet.
I mean, it's very serious there. But And also all the military schools that you do and the summer details and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so for me, obviously the bulk of that is academics, and I'm middle of my class academically. Militarily, I was at the bottom of my class. It was like 317 hours. I just kept getting in trouble. That meant I lacked military bearing, I guess. But physically, I went from being such a shitbag. I showed up there the worst in my platoon. Everyone, I know they all hated me. I was the weak link of the platoon. That was the reason everyone was having to do push-ups. It was just all of that. That was me, because I just showed up totally unprepared for the physical side of this. Doing a little bit of crew back with my high school team did not get me ready for boot camp. But then by the time I graduated, I was actually top of my class physically from, all sorts of things I had put myself through, but turned that weakness into a strength. So yeah.
what's the weighted value then? Because you just mentioned thirds here. So
it's 55% academics. I'm in the middle of my class. 30% military. I'm at the bottom of my class. And then the last 15% physical. I'm at the top. So all of that averaged out, and I was in the middle of my class. But as a woman, when there's only like 200 women in your class of 1,200, the good stuff goes out early, and you're kind of in a window where if there's a lot of women there too who want to do the more hardcore, I guess, like branches. And back then, I think it might have been less than half the branches were even open to us. Now it's so different to even imagine to have the full list. But back then it was only some of them, and a lot of those are combat arms. And there are these rules there about what percentage of women versus men could even branch combat arms. So long story short, long story long,
it's fine.
Yeah, it's a podcast.
Yeah.
I would definitely want to do something combat arms, but I was just narrowly missing everything due to my class rank. And so I ended up getting branch ordnance, which was my 7th choice.
Oh
my God.
Yowza.
Yeah. And for being middle of my class, it was kind of like, and that was just because maybe if I'd been a male, it would have been different, but it all worked out fine in the end. But
so what was your first choice?
I think aviation. I got eye surgery even to go do that, and I kind of regret that now, but
You just wanted to fly helicopters at that point.
I did. It just seemed fun and interesting.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was going to make for an interesting Army career. And then I had like engineers there and several other things. And I ended up getting branch ordnance. So, but because ordnance was not a coveted branch at West Point back then, probably, who knows today?
Probably not ever.
Okay, it wasn't chem. I think that's the one that like
Nothing against those of you that are EOD or anything, but
So I'm branch ordnance, but I'm at the top of the ordnance branch for posting. So I ended up picking Germany, which was really exciting.
Where at in Germany?
Well, I didn't end up going. I can't even remember which base it was.
Man.
might have been over there when Kyle was there. When were you there?
I was I joined the Army in 2009, so my lieutenant was a class of 2009.
Who was it?
We were the same age. He didn't go to West Point. He went to Boise State.
Okay.
The other 2 lieutenants in our platoon were class of 2008. In our troop were class of 2008 from West Point. What's his name? Schmutz. Do you remember a guy named Schmutz?
That's an easy name to remember.
Yeah. He was a character, man. He was. But mine Bradfield, he went to Boise State.
Okay.
But anyway, we were all the same age because I spent 5.5 wonderful years in college before I enlisted in the Army. So
You took the long route.
yeah, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
And didn't graduate, by the way.
Just a West Point grad. You know what I mean? I joined the Army with just as many credit hours as you and nothing to show for it.
Oh man. Well, I'm sure your role was really.
It worked out.
Yeah.
So you chose EOD, and you were scheduled to go to Germany, but so you backed out? Or?
Well, so I was at ordnance. Sorry, I'm going to be calling. I don't even think some of these programs exist anymore. It was OBC, Officer Basic Course. I'm going to do my ordnance training, and there is where you get to do EOD school tryouts. And so I had actually the mother of my godsons, who I'm like definitely in their neck of the woods these days. Spend a lot of time with them. She was a mentor of mine at West Point, and she had gone EOD, and I was like, well, what's that all about? And she told me about it. I talked to a couple of other officers, and they explained it. I said, okay, well, even though I'm ordnance, this sounds like kind of hardcore. I feel like maybe this is what I should be doing. So why not? So I got through the tryouts. I was really excited. Bomb suit, fine, not claustrophobic. And then Went to EOD school, which was in 2 phases. Part of it was in Redstone, and then the rest of it was in Florida at Eglin Air Force Base.
Yep.
And so I keep saying I can't remember. I'm like 35 now. This is when I was like early 20s.
Totally understand that.
But yeah, so the school was maybe about 12 months, and I think I made it to like the 11th month, and then washed out.
Wow.
And it was kind of a weird situation, a little political. There were 7 women at the time going through this course with 2,000 men. And there was this one cadre member, is that what we say?
Yeah.
Yeah. In particular, who just like did not like me. He just had a thing. And I think that came from, at the time I was still doing a lot of like races. I wouldn't say like normally, as a
like 5K?
Well, no, I was doing marathons.
Okay.
At that time I think I'd already gotten this world record for the fastest marathon full military uniform, and I was training for other things.
Oh, so you were already in the paper, you were a celebrity, and you're coming through my program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're a woman.
Yes.
Exactly. And then on top of that, while I was there, I was invited to do a triathlon to represent the Army, actually. And I mean, not like I was a pro and going to get first place or something, but it was just, they were like, oh yeah, well, you can come, and like, as long as you wear this, on your jersey, then we'll like waive the fee and, have you representing the Army, and we have people representing these different branches. And it was like a few hour drive on a weekend. We didn't have any school during the weekend, and I filled out a pass so that I could go, since it was outside of 250 miles or whatever. I know. These days I'm like, I had to ask permission to go do something on a weekend. What was my life?
Yeah.
But so I filled it out. I was doing everything right. And this came across his desk, and he was like, oh, here's my moment. I'm just going to be like, no. And he like flipped his desk over almost, was yelling, made this whole scene in the office about how I didn't care about EOD. I wasn't committed. All I wanted to do was race, and I was going to injure myself at this race, and then I was going to be able to finish the program.
Well, he saw your whole future and you didn't.
Wow.
I know. I got to thank this guy, whatever his name was, because good. I forget that too.
Were you in the Florida phase then?
I was. Yeah, I was almost done with school, and I mean, a bunch of other little things, but basically at that point forward, it was all subjective. Like, I'd gone through all the objective, like memorizing a million things, taking a test every single day, and then on like a practical thing, kicked me out. So, but by then I'd already given away my Germany slot to someone else at OBC, and actually this was it got bad, because then they were like, well, okay, now you're gonna get sent to Fort Jackson. And for a West Point lieutenant, that's like, I mean, Fort Jackson's great, but for a West Point lieutenant, that was like the least glamorous place to go. You're not going to deploy. All your classmates are like, what are you doing? This is
TRADOC installation.
Yeah, exactly. And some people want to be in TRADOC for plenty of reasons, but I was like, no. I literally was trying to do the opposite of this. And so I get there, but I had this awesome, commander who knew my mission in life. I was like, I really just want to deploy. And so he helped me get on as an individual augmentee to go do a provincial reconstruction team and join that as a logistics officer. And then that was my role during the day. And then at night I was doing the female engagement team leader stuff, which totally just fell into my lap. So ultimately at the end of all of this, if my whole goal from West Point was like, I want to go deploy and have a hardcore deployment where I actually feel like I'm, contributing in like the most way that feels fulfilling to me, I actually got that in this super roundabout way, because over there, I basically, I was going outside the wire plenty. I was, going out at night. I was part of this, spearheading this program for women doing the female engagement team leader stuff. And yeah, it was a humanitarian mission, which felt super aligned to me. I mean, part of me like could have gone to West Point or could have gone to the Peace Corps, like would have been, fine with either one of those.
Totally see that.
Yeah. So that ended up being like the best deployment. And when I think back to it, I'm like, okay, would I rather have deployed as EOD or that? Like, I would have. This wasn't even available to me out of West Point, which is why I ended up choosing EOD in the first place. But yeah, so I ended up getting to do that, and then even ended up getting a post. I never got to go to Germany, but I did get to go to Korea for my last year and a half. Worked for a 3-star out there and lived in Seoul, which was
That's probably pretty sweet.
Yeah, really. I mean, important for me just having like Korean background but like growing up in middle of nowhere, Ohio, not really being connected to that and having all these questions about like, why is my family like this? Why is my mom like this?
Kind of bringing it full circle.
Yeah. And I got to do it, through the Army, which was such a gift. So everything ended up working out. But that was like that was basically my career.
You ended up spending, 18 months or 24 because of Seoul? Isn't Seoul different than like the DMZ? At least it used to be at one point.
Yeah. Well, I did about 18 months in Korea. I think I had a 1-year assignment, but I extended it a little bit. So Seoul is not far from the DMZ. And actually, I did go to the DMZ a lot on these different tours, or even like when friends would come into town, I would take them there. But it was like maybe 3 years later, I actually went to the DMZ on the other side from the North Korea side. I spent a week over there.
How'd you
do tell.
What law did you break?
I mean, any rules. Like, I told you, I filled out all my paperwork to go out of the 250-mile radius. I've gotten busted too many times to like try to skirt the rules. But yeah, it was, there was some stuff I had to do. So I always thought Americans can't go to North Korea. Yeah. But for years.
I didn't realize that.
Well, okay, so this was back then. I told you guys I was running marathons and all of that. And as a joke, my friends would send me this article that CNN, I think, would do every year. There was the Pyongyang Marathon. They would do a little write-up on it. And they're like, oh, you should do this one next, ha, ha, ha. Because, I was always doing a couple a year. And when I got to business school in Philly, I got that article again and I looked at it. I was like, okay, look, there are Americans in this race. How are they in this? Now I'm actually a little intrigued. So I did the research and I found out actually Americans could go. There was actually nothing blocking you. And you could do the whole week over there as long as there's like a few UK tour companies that would do it, but they ran their businesses out of China. So you'd have to go into China first. And then it was a little weird because they would take your passport and not give it back to you till the end of the trip. And the North Korean visa was a separate piece of paper that they would just like put in there. But when you left, they took it back and it's like the whole thing never happened. But
that's some freaky stuff right there.
I mean, there's so much freaky stuff about North Korea, but yeah, at the time, like you actually could go. But when I applied, I was totally upfront. I said, hey, look, I worked for a 3-star in South Korea, who was in charge of all, deterring North Korean aggression. He was the commanding general of 8th Army over in Korea. And so, yeah, I was his deputy XO. And on top of that, I had a top secret security clearance, which had just expired. So I told them all of this and they were like, yeah, we don't care about any of that. What is this middle name on your passport, Sungbin? What is that all about? Because my middle name is Korean. My first and last name are more like my dad French side, but my middle name's Korean. So they saw that in there and they're like, we just need you to sign this waiver. It says you're not going to try to go find your long lost relatives. And so that's the oney issue they had. I was like, fine, I don't even know where they are. So I signed.
I was going to say, had you done any genealogy at this point?
That'd be the next thing.
Hey, I'm going to break out and go into North Korea and try to hunt down my relatives.
Well, the thing is, all the stories that you hear, I mean, I did a lot of research on this beforehand. Because obviously, my friends were like, you're an idiot. Why are you going to there? You're going to get like murdered or captured and they're not going to let you come back. And yes, there's a lot of stories about people being detained in North Korea, but from my research, what I saw was 100% of them broke some rule that they knew they were breaking that would not have been that big of an issue anywhere else. But in North Korea, like, I don't know, I don't mess around in North Korea. So it's either people like crossing the border illegally from China, like proselytizing, bringing Bibles over, or reporters who went in saying they're not a reporter, but they're actually there trying to get a story. Or the poor kid who stole the poster. That was a year after I left. There was an American college student, Otto Warmbier, who stole a poster off a wall the story was he was going to trade it to somebody for a car when he came back home or something.
It was like a poster of Kim Jong-un too, wasn't it?
It's like they got propaganda posters everywhere there. I mean, you can buy them if you want.
Who won the race while you were there? Did Kim Jong-un win the race?
Actually, there was, I think, an Ethiopian or Kenyan who was about to win because it was several laps around downtown.
And they stopped him?
No, they sent him the wrong way at the last minute and sent a North Korean on so the North Korean
would
win. Yes.
Much, yeah.
You can't make that up.
Yeah.
You can't make that up.
Any country that has an automatic hole-in-one golf course. I read an article, I don't know if it's true or not, but it was like this. There's this one golf course there. Every green is like slanted towards towards the hole. So all you got to do is hit the green and it goes in the hole. So
they didn't let us go to any.
That's like miniature golf kind of place,
exactly,
right?
But like
that's North Korea. They make their own rules. Yeah, actually, I went to a shooting range there. That was a little weird. You had the option to shoot a chicken if you wanted, but
Like a live chicken?
yeah, but they were like all in a cage, like just on the other end. And it's like, do you want to like shoot a caged chicken? Like, no. It was weird. They do. I mean, I didn't see anything that I really support over there, but I also didn't really even see the full story. It's always, they just show you what they want you to see it. And even that's not, it's fascinating its own way. That is the only vacation that I've ever been to where watching people walk down the sidewalk out of the tour bus window it didn't get old by the end of the week. Like the most mundane things I was just so fascinated by, because like they are living in another dimension over there. It's really sad and bizarre. And yeah,
The other side of it, though, if you grew up there and you never experienced anything else, how would you know any different?
I wonder how much more they know though now, because there's a lot of like SD cards that get dropped over
Elon Musk and Starlink and
people are always dropping, and like they have computers at home, and so they'll watch Korean dramas and soap operas from South Korea over there, which would look so crazy to someone in that world, but they've seen it and they know it's out there. I just there's people who end up escaping and they tell a little bit about it, but yeah, like obviously, I mean, I think most
is it as surreal as your first couple weeks in Afghanistan? How does that compare? Because I thought I was in the Stone Age, but they happened to have cell phones. You know what I mean? Like it was mud huts, it was rocks, it was that, but you have a cell phone.
I remember feeling that similarly. The whole Stone Age is feeling over there too. Seeing just livestock, cows and stuff, just hanging out in the living room and. Kick open a door and there's a baby in a swing and a cow next to it in the same room. Yeah, that's real life. Yeah. Very common scene. I mean, I guess it was just different. Where I went in North Korea, everything was kind of modern. I wouldn't call it modern. It was like this Soviet sort of architecture. It's very like
late
Soviet
20th
inspired.
century Soviet chic.
But it's like a little crumbling, a little weird. Like even in the lobby of the hotel, there's these like sad sharks swimming around like this aquarium, and it's really bleak and strange. I hate to even complain too much because we were eating better than 99.9% of the country, even though it was just like a deep fried fish bone and like some wilted kimchi. But yeah.
Did the kimchi compare to South Korean kimchi?
Not even close. It wasn't even the same thing. Not even close.
Where'd you finish? In the race.
Oh, where did I finish? Oh, I don't even know. I didn't get a great finish time there. I mean, there were like professionals coming there to win, and well, I don't know, the North Koreans won, but
so they didn't route you in the wrong direction. Meant that you
not for me.
You didn't do that well then.
No, I mean that one I was I was not. That was like I think that was the last marathon I've ever done. I came out of retirement just to do that one.
Cool.
Wow.
And they had a cutoff of 4 hours, I think, which is. I think most marathons are like 5 or 6 hours. So 4 hours, I was like, okay, I actually got to like train a little bit for this. So, but yeah, I was like not far from 4 hours. I just wanted to get under it.
What was the elevation though? Was it a pretty good elevation there?
I can't even remember. It wasn't anything.
You don't remember it being like an issue?
No, definitely not.
So let's go back though to one of those initial ones, of course, prior to going to EOD school, of what you did and setting the record, of course, with the gear. So let's go back to that time period and such. So tell us about that. What made you want to go into that?
Yeah, well, I'd been running marathons. I would do like a couple of them every year, and I was doing one for some type of veteran charity each year, and then the other one was just kind of like, okay, keep training. But I didn't want to ask people for money like twice a year. I was kind of always asking the same people for money, like these professors, these old friends, these these friends of mine, and I just felt like, okay, I gotta like up the ante. I can't just be telling everyone like, okay, I'm doing another marathon. This one's just in a different city. Donate money to this veteran organization. So the organization I chose that year was one around traumatic brain injuries.
Okay.
And I remembered looking in the Guinness World Book of Records and seeing a soldier had done it in his gear, a British guy, and I just went back. I thought, okay, now I've run several marathons. I have an idea of what my pace is. I just want to see what that time was. If it was like shocking to me, or if it's like, oh, okay, that guy was the only one who tried to do it or something. So I looked it up, and it really wasn't that hard of a time. And so, yeah, I think it was like a little over 4 hours, and full gear by that definition was helmet, obviously like whatever uniform top and bottom were, and then body armor with the plates in, and your boots. So they called that full military uniform.
Did they weigh everything to make sure it was equal?
It wasn't like even based on weight. It was like you have to have those items.
Okay.
What boots did you wear?
Definitely the Nike ones.
The Nike Freeze. Nice. Okay. I was going to say.
They had been out for a few years, and I definitely wore them. But there was no getting around the ACH.
No, yeah.
That thing was heavy. And then the body armor, I mean, I like cinched that down so tight, but it still like rubbed my back just raw. And also I think I wore the top that was, the top you could wear.
They had the rank on the side.
Yeah, that thing.
The cool guy top. That all the overweight National Guards dude wore in the chow hall. Like,
oh my
dude,
gosh.
put that thing away, man. Just go put something else on and come back and eat.
Well, that was, I mean, a way to instead of me running in like that top that feels like cardboard, it made a lot of sense. So that was some ways that I made it work for me. But so that was what I ran. And I looked at him, I thought, okay, I'll run. I think his time was like it was 5 something. I think 5:17. And I thought, okay, if I run with the 5-hour pace group and just try to break that, then I should be good. And I was running with the 5-hour pace group. And then, I think we were at like mile 20 or something. And the leader was like, I think you're good. You should just break off and go. And I was so scared. I was like, oh no, like I just should stay with you guys and then I'll get it. But should I be greedy and try to go a little faster? And I thought, okay. And I went and ended up finishing in 4:54. So, but then it ended up automatically becoming the women's record. They only had one before that for the men. And so even though it beat his record, it just became its own thing. So I think he still kept that technically. But since then, I think a lot of men have broken his record. And I don't know if anyone's even trying to break mine.
Have you not like gone out there periodically and go, hey, okay, still good? Still good?
I think I have seen it. I don't know, sometime in the last couple years. But also, I feel like if someone tried to break it, like somehow I would find out. And I would be so excited for anyone. I mean, that was a goal dream. This was like 10 years ago now. If for someone else to get to enjoy that whole, journey and train for that and have that, someone else can have, this is my permission. Whoever's listening, woman who wants to go run a marathon in that, get up, go do it and pick a fast race and you'll do good.
The endurance that goes with that. I mean, that's 5 hours of running with that gear. That's some serious stuff right there.
Your shoulders were smoked, weren't they?
Well, honestly, that was not my hardest race at all.
Really?
It kind of just felt like a little trot. I mean, that was not my normal race pace. Like a normal race for me, I think my fastest was, I don't know, low 3 something. So that race was just a very comfortable, and I was training with my, a weight vest on all the time.
So have you qualified for Boston?
Yeah, I qualified.
Have you ran Boston?
Before that, I did.
Okay.
I think that's where I PR'd, was Boston.
It's a hell of a race to PR at.
I mean, I was so happy at that race. I'd been reading race reports of like what happens at, Wellesley and all these different places. And when I was in that race, I think I was cried at least twice, just like, oh my gosh, this feels so, you're just in it. You're in the moment. You're so present.
Well, everyone I've talked to that's raced that race said it's like somebody scoring a touchdown all the time. That's how loud it is all the time. Someone's cheering for you. Everybody loves the fact that you're there, and it's like the most motivated race you've ever been in.
It's a big party.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I've wanted to go back.
After the bombing and everything too. So how was that, for you?
Yeah. Just it seemed like the city just like picked right back up and wasn't going to let that stop them. So, and even since then, it seems like it's still always a big thing. And I've got friends who go.
You went from West Point. You mentioned that you weren't like the stalwart, great athletic individual, to running marathons and breaking world records.
Yeah, it seems kind of backwards.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Usually it's you peak there and then like the rest of us, it starts going downhill after that as you get older. Yeah. So
I don't know if it's like overwhelming modesty or what is it like. So.
Do tell.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think I'm not like a natural born athlete. I don't think I have a lot of just natural talent really for anything. No, really, I don't.
Believe you.
No, it's true. I mean, the one thing I was good at West Point, I will say, at Beast or boot camp, one of the things you have to do is memorize all these different, war speeches from generals and like the rank and all these different aspects of the M9 and the M7 or whatever. But so I was fast at memorizing things, and I guess that helped me out at EOD school too. But like physically, military, all these things, like I had a ways to go. So but what one thing I do have that works, for any of these disciplines is I just feel like I just know I can outsuffer most people.
You can embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll just keep going.
Yeah. You're not going to break me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, that definitely goes, back to childhood and the
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, that's that drive of you can't break me and I'm going to demonstrate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, just from such a young age being the, really in my family system, I was definitely the scapegoat from like, I don't know about day one, but from like, I don't know, at least the age of 10 onwards, maybe even a little bit before that. So just growing up in that and having to tolerate or take pretty much
you're
anything.
Shouldering a burden that you shouldn't have had to shoulder, but you learn to cope with it.
Exactly.
So yeah, makes sense.
And it helped me out in plenty of ways in the Army. It's helped me out in plenty of ways since then with, if I want to go climb a mountain or I want to do different things. But I do notice it's also this armor of sorts that has kept me from, I think, reaching my full potential in plenty of other things. Definitely with knowing myself, definitely with sometimes even relationships and connecting with other people. So I wasn't really in that phase of life back then. So it was just working for me in a lot of ways. And people, especially in the military, you'll get so much validation for being able to PT and just putting up with anything and never quitting. I mean, that's kind of what the job is in so many ways. So I was made to be in the Army. I was not made to be at West Point. But once I got to the Army, those things really worked in my favor. And then with all these, stressful hobbies I was coming up with to do on the side. So, I had so much anger and energy. I had to get it out some way. Like I've been in the hospital twice with alcohol poisoning. So, that obviously wasn't working for me. And then, plenty of other dramatic things that I had going on in my life. But this was the one thing, exercise, where it was socially acceptable. It made me look great at work. It made me better at my job to be this fit. And so that was the avenue that I just went full force. Okay, what else can I do in this world? And, other people are being inspired by this. I thought, oh, wow, this is just my dysfunction, but great. If that inspires someone, I guess that makes you feel good. So yeah, I think that's where that came from. Just being so young and having to tolerate literally anything and just insanity and always being in the middle of that. But, now being, at my age now, I just try to find ways to channel that in healthier ways and to use it as a gift and to use it to accomplish things I want to, but not in, not things that destroy myself. Like, I think I've destroyed my body enough. We don't need to do more.
I heard something here. I got to ask you a question. Am I in the presence of another ASAP graduate?
ASAP graduate.
Army Substance Abuse Program? I knew it.
You got to tell me what this is as well. Then.
So early or late 2000s, early 2010s, I don't know what they call it now, but the Army had an Army Substance Abuse Program. And so if you were found to have a problem with drinking or any type of thing, you failed a drug test, whatever, you were asked to go and get an evaluation. And if you failed or passed the evaluation, then it would lead into further training in this program. And just, I guess you were probably in West Point when you had trouble with alcohol.
Yeah.
That being the time of the in the Army's life, you probably had to go to ASAP or had some type of ASAP.
They threw everything at me. I did 200 of my hours were for alcohol.
Yeah.
So that was a year straight of just marching around in a square. And I had to do ASAP and I had to do AA. I had to go to the local AA meetings in my uniform. It was just real. That was, yeah. And the weird thing was clearly I had an issue with drinking, but I wasn't drinking that much. It was like,
binge drinking.
But when you went drinking, it was 0 to 100
full
real
in.
quick.
Totally.
Yeah.
There is no one drink. I can't even fathom that. It was just, I was gonna get tanked.
Oh yeah.
And also I wasn't really slick back then. I just thought, okay, I'm out of my parents' house now where, everything was so controlled. Now anything but that must be freedom, right? Like I thought West Point was freedom. I went there thinking I am free just because I'm out of that. I mean, and in a lot of ways, West Point was like the Shangri-La compared to where I had come from. But obviously, if you're just going to be yourself and like stand out already as it is as a woman, I mean, I had a target on my back, and it was like for every 2 times I went out drinking, I was getting 100 hours. I was getting in trouble for at least one of them. So, whereas most cadets are actually drinking, they're just not getting busted for it. So, I did ASAP, I did AA, and
not to make light of the situation, but real recognizes real sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, and granted, I don't even think I got that much out of those programs. There's something about the way they were structured. I think they mean well, but I had to go on my own journey to figure out why, how to get out of those
You had to discover
things.
why your relationship with alcohol was the way it was.
It's the why.
Yeah. And for me, I think, honestly, can you guys talk about like plant medicine and stuff on here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We were sponsored by a CBD company.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think for me, like the biggest finally like breaking through that was many years later and going. I went and did ayahuasca in Peru.
Did you really?
But this is
tell us about that.
So this was back in 2018.
Okay.
And I was there for a week. It was like between work projects, and so I only had a week, but they like you to go for 10 days, but I only had 7. So I did 4 ayahuasca ceremonies, and it was kind of the classic thing. I mean, it was out in the middle of nowhere. I had so many mosquito bites that it looked like I had a full body rash, and but it was the full experience. And you're out there, and you just do it at night, and it goes on all night long, and it was really intense. Not all the ceremonies were the same, but the one that stands out to me the most was, so ayahuasca teaches you a lot about empathy, and I went there with the intention of, I just want to work on my relationship with myself. Whatever this is, like, I don't even know what I'm seeking or searching for, but whatever that is, I know it has something to do with me. And what ended up happening in my second ceremony was, all of a sudden I was looking at myself, but I wasn't myself. I was actually my mom. And so I became my mom, and I was looking at me, and I felt what she feels when she looks at me. And it was so intense because I've been hearing my whole life, that, so my mom grew up very poor in Korea. For her generation, it was like a third world country. When we think of Korea now, it's plastic surgery and top of the line electronics.
Capital of the world.
But back then it was very poor, and so my life growing up upper middle class in Ohio, even though I thought it was like lame compared to New York City or something. I mean, to her that was like the creme de la creme. How the other half lives, and so I was really fortunate to have been born into that world, but I didn't know anything but that, and so. I didn't really have an appreciation for what my mom had been through and understanding why, I deserved to be tortured for whatever, these different circumstances that we were born into. But when I saw myself from her eyes, and at the time I was working as a consultant at McKinsey, and my life was like not fun. I was flying for work every week. I was stressed out with keeping up with client demands and all of that. And that's, why I felt like I needed to go into the jungle to go figure things out. But when I saw myself through her eyes, I just saw like everything she wanted for herself. I complain about flying in a plane every week, but to her, all she sees is flying first class twice a week. This is amazing. Or going to clients and like having to prepare for me. And she just, to her, that would have been like someone admiring you for what your brain has to offer. Like these are things that, were never even opportunities for her. So, and I just felt such a deep appreciation for that in the moment, and, forgave her for, all the things. And so that was super powerful for me. But still, after that, I stayed on the path and consulting for years, and it just progressively still got worse and worse and worse. And even though I healed this thing with my mom, I still hadn't figured out, why was I still so miserable? And I hadn't figured out the thing with myself. And that didn't happen until years later. Different plant medicine ceremony where, this was
Kissing the toad, or?
Was it Ibogaine?
It was DMT.
Nice.
Okay, yeah.
Not to be trifled with.
Yeah. I guess, do we even call that plant medicine? I guess partially. But I was, all I saw was this fire, and there was this silo in the middle of it, and there was a fire going on in the inside of the silo, and there was this window, and I just saw this like figure in the window, and it was screaming down into the flames to just like go harder, work like faster, just like yelling out all these demands. And
you won't want to miss part 2 with Sophie, where she talks about her crazy hallucinations, but how she was able to recover from some trauma by taking DMT.
And I just knew instinctively that like, okay, that's my ego up there screaming at me, just on fire. And
also, she talks a lot about her summiting of Mount Everest. Check out part 2 coming next week.